Well, welcome to the Kristi Jones Show, where it's all about living your life to the fullest. I'm a life coach, speaker, and business owner in multifamily real estate, and I've had wild success in multifamily housing for over 25 years now. I am so passionate about helping others merge their success and lead a fulfilling life, and I bring it all together right here on this podcast. So join me and let's get started to live your life to the fullest. Hey, my friends, welcome back to another episode here on the Kristi Jones Show. Really excited to jump into this topic today. So let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered how or why two people can hear the exact same words or maybe read the exact same sentence and walk away with completely different stories? Today, I'm going to dive into the fascinating world of perception. Also going to talk about how you are the one that's in charge of your emotions and how you feel about something, and really how we interpret everything around us. So let's explore, and I'm going to dive into this to give you some food for thought on how we can shift our perspective and really transform our own lives. So let's get into it. First, let me say that just hearing that right there, if this is something you're like, oh my gosh, my BFF or my coworker, we talk about this all the time, they need to know this. Will you hit share on this episode and send it to them? I would love that. And also, if you just take like 2 seconds out of your day and rate and review the podcast, I would so appreciate that. But pass this on, like, don't be a gatekeeper. What you learned today, if you could think of someone else that maybe you've had the same conversation with, pass this episode on to them. So let's talk about this. Like, I coach on this a lot. I talk about this, comes up in life all the time. I know that if you just think about in the course of maybe just think of the last 2 to 3 months of your life, how something potentially has come up to where you and another person saw the same thing, read the same thing, heard the same story, but you both walked away with an entirely different feeling about it, a different perspective about it. And I'm going to talk about that today. And then my goal is for you at the end of this episode to have a little more self-awareness about yourself, so you know that you have the ability to shape your perspective, and also to really you are the driver, you are the force behind your feelings and your emotions. And that's so much driven by our thoughts, which our thoughts come from the way we interpret information. So let me start with this, the lens of experience. I want to talk about how their life experiences shape the way that they interpret information. And we each have a different life experience. We all have a different past. We all have a different story. We all have a very unique life experience. And that is, if you have like people that have zero self-awareness and they are just what I call on like an autopilot reaction, they're not even aware that that's a driving force for them. But if you are aware of it, like you're already aware that your past experiences, your life experiences contribute to the way that you interpret current day information. If you're aware of that, that gives you a whole different lens, that at least you're aware of it. Now, you maybe aren't to the point where you know how to like filter that, or is that working for you? Is it not working for you? But if you're at least can become aware of it, that right there is a game changer. So you can have two different life experiences, and we all do. We all have just a variety of different experiences. And it really does affect the way that we interpret the exact same information. So you and I, we could read the exact same paragraph in a book. We could read the exact same caption on a social media post, and we're both going to interpret that differently. And we are interpreting and shaping our perspective. And if you're not consciously aware of it, then your subconscious is running the show. And you're interpreting that information based on your life experiences. which that can be a really, so that's where like misunderstanding and, that can be like a treacherous trail if you're not even aware of that, because you're allowing past experiences to influence your perspective. Now, when two people read the same paragraph, one person could find that very offensive, and the next person, it doesn't even like it didn't even register. Like it absolutely, they didn't take anything personal about it. So we're putting meaning into words. And that's very human. Like that's a normal thing to do. But what you have to be cognizant of is, are you letting your past life experiences dictate that narrative and influence your perspective? And basically almost putting meaning behind the words that's not there. So the lens of experience is a really important thing to be aware of, and to recognize that it's going to affect your understanding and it's going to affect the other person's understanding. The second thing I want to say and point I want to make on this is, let's talk about perception versus reality. What we perceive in what we're reading or hearing does not mean that that is reality. That is our perception of what we're consuming. That is our perception of, like the example I used earlier, the example of the paragraph or the sentence that you read. That's your perception of it. The reality is often it's a less volatile, less emotional thing, because that's what we bring to the equation. So perception versus reality. What we perceive is often a direct reflection of our inner world, whatever's going on inside of you. That affects your perception rather than what is like an objective reality. It's really important to differentiate the two and understand, at least conceptually, like understand that your perception is based on your inner world. It is not a reflection, it's not the absolute reality, the objective reality of what's going on, the objective reality of the words you're reading. So it's oftentimes what a person perceives, or a lot of times I like to say the thoughts that they are associating with the circumstance, that has a lot to do with their inner world. That's why two people can read the exact same thing, and one person's, maybe they find it informative. They're like, oh, or they're like, oh, that's nice. Or it's totally neutral. And another person can read the exact same paragraph and have all kinds of feelings about it. Because one, like we talked about, their lens of experience, and two, their perception is a direct reflection of their inner world, of what's going on inside of them. And I'm not going to dive into this in this episode, but often the way we respond to things has so much to do with our inner world, with what's going on inside of us. And if you're not tuned into that or tapped into that, then it's that subconscious just running the narrative, and you're not being an active participant in that. So perception versus reality. Self-awareness and mindfulness, again, such an important thing to develop in yourself, because that's what helps you understand that what we perceive is often a reflection of our inner world rather than an objective reality. So self-awareness is is so important to develop within yourself, and to know yourself. That's why when you hear people say, like, when they have a better understanding of themselves and they know themselves better, doesn't mean that when these things come up, they don't recognize, it could just be how I'm perceiving it because of what's going on inside of me, or because of my lens of experience. And they're realizing that that's not the reality, that I'm the one putting all this meaning behind a neutral circumstance or a neutral word. let's talk about the power of communication. Oftentimes when these things happen, someone will say, you know, what what you said or what you wrote, it bothered me, and this is why. And that really opens up a chance for you to have communication. And it doesn't have to be a heated situation. It's communication. I really like to approach a lot of things with a really like it's neutral communication because it's just two people sharing viewpoints. And it doesn't have to be a highly charged situation. When we can communicate clearly and effectively, it's it's knowing that people will interpret things through their own lives, through their own lens. I know that. I know that people are interpreting information through their own lens. And so the importance of being able, if someone, and this happened to me, where someone came forward and said, somebody saw this social media post and told me about it. So it wasn't like a firsthand situation, and it made me feel this way. And we had a conversation about it, and I I explained that that wasn't the intent at all. I explained what my what honestly, I mean, it didn't hold a lot of um, it didn't hold a lot of the underlying meaning that I think the initial person that saw it felt like it had. And so I explained that, and I feel like we had a really good line of communication about it. And you got to stay open to feedback. So I'm open to feedback. At the end of the day, I don't feel responsible for how people feel. So that is clearly that's in their backyard. They've got to manage that. They get to determine how they feel. They get to determine how they perceive information. And but I do feel like it's important that we stay open to communication, to being to clarifying intent if it's needed, and being open to feedback, but also staying true to yourself and sticking with how whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. But communication doesn't have to be a highly volatile situation. Again, you choose how you feel. You choose the meaning you put behind it. You choose the thoughts that you have. The thoughts you have really impact the feelings that you have. So that should really be empowering to you to know that you're in the driver's seat of how you experience your life. I've talked about this before. Same circumstances can happen, same situation can happen. Put two people side by side, they're going to experience it differently. They're going to have a different lens of experience. They're going to have a different level of self-awareness, of understanding perception versus reality. So it's really important to know, and I think very empowering for you to know that you are in the driver's seat for how you feel about any circumstance, any situation. So I hope that helps you and makes you feel empowered and not. A lot of times people are saying that they feel like a victim to their feelings and a victim to their circumstance. And I don't believe that. I think that we have to shift how we just have to flip the script on that, which everyone is very capable of doing that. Emotional ownership. Let me touch on that one and kind of wrap up talking about emotional ownership. I've already segued into that a little bit, but I want to emphasize the idea that we are responsible for our own emotions. We are responsible for our own reactions. It is not so and so made me feel this way. So and so made me react this way, or this situation made me react this way. We have to take personal accountability for our emotions and our reactions. Nobody forces you to feel a certain way. I hope this is kind of shed some light on your own involvement in how you feel, how you perceive information, how you think about a circumstance. You get to take emotional ownership of that. I think back to something long ago in my life that really was an unfortunate, very unfortunate circumstance when I was almost 16 years old. And for quite a long time, I did have a sense of where the way I felt about it, I did not take emotional ownership of that. I felt that, well, I feel this way because this happened. They did this to me. This happened to me. It was very opposite of what I'm talking about today. Um, so I remember being stuck and how almost how paralyzing that feeling and that emotion kept me. And it wasn't until I decided to see the circumstance didn't change. What had happened. And as unfortunate and I could even use the word as tragic as it happened. It's like spilt milk, right? You spilled them, it happened. And what I could change was having emotional ownership of how I felt about it. I was giving so much, I will say, power to the other person, to the unfortunate circumstance, to the unfortunate event, that when I finally was able to get to a place where I knew I was responsible, I wasn't maybe responsible for what took place, but I was responsible for my emotions about it. I was responsible for my reactions. I was responsible for my healing about it. And when that finally, I had that light bulb moment, everything changed for me. I mean, the felt so much lighter. I didn't have that where it was like almost that victim mentality where you're like, well, you know, I wouldn't feel this way if this didn't happen. So that was a really big, big, big mental light bulb moment for me. Now, fortunately, that happened, like there wasn't a long span of time where I stayed in that old mindset. And I'm really grateful that I mean, it wasn't overnight and it wasn't in a year. It took some time, but it didn't take forever in a day. I feel like looking back on it, I really did find a way and to reframe my thoughts about it and to take emotional ownership of how I felt as a result of it. That changed everything for me. And I really started to apply that, in much smaller things in my life. So as I moved through life, that really served me. That's why I'm so big on it, taking emotional ownership. It could be like very practical ways to manage your responses on the day-to-day things, on how you cannot take things so personally. Have you ever known anyone, or maybe this is you, and if that is, I just want you to like, there's no shame, it's just recognize these things. Are you someone that takes things very personally? I know I used to have a friend that took so many things personally, and I was constantly like, that wasn't even directed. I mean, how could that? I was always confused, like, how are you taking that personal? But again, everyone has a different lens of experience, perception versus a different awareness level of perception versus reality, a different level of emotional ownership. But how can you begin to not take things so personally? Something I'm going to toss out there that if you want to, cling to this, adopt this, or lean into this is that I take very little when people say things or the way they behave, the way they respond. I do not take it personal. And I have a lot of empathy if people show up in a not so nice way or in a critical way or in a very judgmental way. I have a lot of empathy for them because the first thing I think of is it must be really tough to be them and to be in their mind feeling that way all the time. And, I have a lot of empathy for that. And that's on them, because people that are very judgmental and very harsh, very critical, hateful, if you want. I mean, they're just know they're not in a good place. There's a lot of pain and suffering going on the inside. Maybe they're aware of it, maybe they're not. But jealousy is another thing that's digging at people and surfaces in a lot of interesting ways. Um, you know, People that maybe you have someone that have a hard time being happy for you when things are going great for you. They're not clapping you up. You really kind of feel like, are they are they talking about me behind my back, or are they not? If you're having to wonder that, I'm speaking from experience. They probably are. If you're Trust your energy, trust your gut. When you get a certain feeling from people, don't discount that. Just acknowledge it. Pay attention to it. I have found that it really doesn't lie. It really doesn't. I mean, I can read a room and pick up on things, but again, I'm in a really great place of my involvement that I do not take things personally. I know when people show up in that energy and in that way, that it's really such a reflection of what's going on with them in their life, whether they're aware of it or whether they're not. It could just be a lot of subconscious stuff. But let me back up to emotional ownership. We are responsible for our own emotions and for our own reactions. We cannot dump that on other people. You get to choose how you feel, and you get to choose how you react to something. So this whole conversation is really heavy in the personal growth and involvement area. And if that is something that's new to you, maybe you're just hearing my podcast for the very first time and this is like, okay, whoa. I touch on these things often in the Flourishing Edge in my coaching, I offer group coaching in the Flourishing Edge inner circle, and it's weekly content, but it is things that really help you flourish and thrive in your life it's those ambitious people ready for their next level life in their careers, in their life. And it's consistent and like ever flowing group coaching. And then for those that like want to do a deep dive, I do one-on-one. There's all different ways that I structure that. I can do it very customized to the length of time that a person wants to do. Also, what's also really helpful and very popular is I have the Flourishing Edge, which is I call it like a concentrated, it's a 90-minute, very impactful session. And it's also loaded with all kinds of extra resources, digital resources and videos that you have at your disposal at any time. But after that 90-minute session, that is for those, it's kind of like you want to get that shot in the arm, that little clarity to, kind of that initial breakthrough. That is the place to do it. So that is my 90-minute, the Flourishing Edge. And it's all on my website. So I'll put a link in the show notes to my website if you're hearing this and you're kind of intrigued about it. So you can learn more about it there. Well, my friend, I hope that this episode has been helpful to you and that it's shed some light on how two people can read the exact same information, hear the exact same story, and respond to it entirely differently. This is to encourage you to challenge yourself on your lens of experience, to challenge yourself on perception versus reality, on being objective instead of everything else running the show. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. So if you've seen that movie, and it's, again, we're going way back to childhood years. Remember, the Wizard of Oz was kind of like behind the curtain, running the show, and nobody ever really. Wasn't until later in the end of the show, but the role that the wizard in the Wizard of Oz was playing, that's what your subconscious can be, to where things are running the show in the background and you're not aware of it. So you're showing up in your life in an entirely different way. And maybe you're showing up in a way that doesn't feel good and it's frustrating to you and you want to make some changes. Understanding the power of communication. So when these moments come up where somebody, through their lens of experience, through their perception, maybe it's something you've said, maybe it's something you've done, and they're perceiving it a certain way, this gives you an opportunity to really have calm and clear communication. So that is a really powerful aspect of this too. Learning not to take things personally, having emotional ownership, knowing that that's on you and not the responsibility of others. It's nobody's responsibility to manage your emotional well-being and your emotional life. That is your responsibility, and you're very equipped to do that. All right, my friend, if this episode has served you, please rate and review the show. I would love to hear your feedback. All the links are in the show notes below. If you have a podcast episode idea, I want to hear about it. Just hit reply to the team at kristijones.org, and we would love to get your feedback. All right, my friend, until next week, take care and stay fabulous. I want to thank you for tuning in today to the podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed the conversation and all the info that's been shared today. And I hope you've come away with a few ideas on how to make the most out of it for your life. If you loved this episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family. And also make sure you subscribe to the podcast and tap that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Also, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would leave a podcast review. So until next time, my friend, keep flourishing and thriving and live your life to the